Oil prices have started to rise with the announcement of OPEC Plus countries to reduce oil production. Lower supply would result in higher prices, which would worsen situations in countries already reeling under inflation. Oil prices have already shot up after the announcement, and it's expected that prices would rise further. Analysts are saying the crude oil would soon cross $100 per barrel. The United States has reacted sharply to the oil production cut and has opened its emergency petroleum reserve as a short-term measure. The Indian government has also said that the production cut goes against the assurances made to New Delhi. The world is concerned about the oil cut as it threatens to push the countries backwards, which are still recovering from the brunt of the pandemic. High prices would mean reduced demand. Fears of a recession are also being expressed. Welcome to Savvy Economist. Today in this video we explain what's OPEC Plus, what's its reasoning for an oil production cut, what are the world's concerns, and how are countries reacting. Also, we would be looking at what Peter Zeihan has to say about these production cuts at this dire time in the world economy. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
OPEC has announced it is planning on reducing output by 2 million barrels a day, despite the fact that there's a war raging in a major energy producer and energy prices writ large are really high and global inflation is high. Now, some people are, of course, well, I shouldn't say some people, a lot of people are, of course, latching this onto what their favorite drum is to beat at the moment. Some people on Twitter have said that, of course, they're doing this to stick it to, quote, my boy Biden. And, my boy Biden? Ew. No. Far more important is that OPEC is nowhere near their production quota. In fact, as recently as August, they were about 2.8 million barrels a day below it. So if they cut their quota by 2 million barrels a day, that actually means they might increase output. So, number one, let's wait to see what happens here. The problem here is that if you are outside of the Persian Gulf, OPEC members, so Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, everyone else has just been in this investment bomb for over a decade. In fact, since 2014, total investment to all oil and all natural gas globally, government, state company, private companies, doesn't matter, the total is down by about 2/3. And the non-Gulf OPEC countries are no exception. Places like Gabon and Nigeria and Venezuela are just borderline incompetent when it comes to maintaining their own energy infrastructure anyway. So they're completely dependent on internal investment, and yet they think they have checks that they need to write, so they don't provide the investors with particularly great terms. And so if you're those investors and cash is limited, you try to put your money elsewhere where it's going to be more productive with a more reliable partner. And that manifests as lower production in a lot of OPEC states, to the tune of apparently 2.8 million barrels per day.
Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, is a cartel of 13 oil producer countries. When OPEC is joined by certain non-OPEC members to make collective decisions over the world's oil business, it's referred to as OPEC Plus. The 13 OPEC members are Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Algeria, Angola, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Libya, Nigeria, and the United Arab Emirates, UAE. Members that join OPEC to make it OPEC Plus are Russia, Mexico, and Kazakhstan. OPEC is a cartel that aims to manage the supply of oil to set the price of oil on the world market to avoid fluctuations that might affect the economies of both producing and purchasing countries, notes Investopedia. The OPEC has said the cut was necessary to respond to rising interest rates in the West and a weaker global economy. The idea is that a weaker economy would mean low demand, which means if they produce above the demand, it would remain unsold. It also mentioned uncertainty that surrounds the global economy and oil market outlooks, and the need to enhance the long-term guidance for the oil market while announcing the oil production cut. The rule of demand and supply will kick in, which says that when supply is lesser than demand, prices rise. So prices of fuel will rise. Prices have already started to rise. Even before the cut was announced, CNBC on Monday reported that oil prices were up by 4%. CNBC on Thursday reported international benchmark Brent crude futures traded at $92.82 a barrel during Wednesday afternoon deals in London, up around 1.1%. U.S. West Texas Intermediate futures, meanwhile, stood at $87.37, almost 1% higher. Analysts say oil prices would cross $100 per barrel. Analysts at PVM Oil Associates and Goldman Sachs see Brent reaching triple digits over the next 3 months, before climbing to $105 over a 6-month horizon, reported CNBC. Such prices come at a time when several countries are already dealing with inflation and high fuel prices, such as the United Kingdom, where the cost of living crisis dominated the recently concluded prime ministerial race. As prices go higher, these countries would suffer more and there would be a serious risk of recession. While inflation is still high and recession is staring everyone in the face, this move would exacerbate the economic downturn, as high oil prices serve as a de facto tax on the economy, noted Forbes. Experts have also highlighted that OPEC Plus reasoning to match supply with alleged low demand is also flawed, as high prices would further drive down demand. The world is reacting with anger and disappointment. U.S. President Joe Biden is disappointed with the decision. The White House is disappointed by the short-sighted decision by OPEC Plus to cut production quotas, while the global economy is dealing with the continued negative impact of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Biden authorized, as a short-term measure, the release of 10 million barrels of oil from U.S. strategic petroleum reserves. The release of this oil in the market would increase supply for some time. Earlier in November 2021, the United States partnered with India, China, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom to simultaneously release oil from their respective strategic reserves into the market to boost supply and drive down prices. But this is a short-term measure. It further puts stress on these reserves, which are meant for national emergencies. The U.S. reserve is already at its lowest in 4 decades. The nation's strategic petroleum reserve had 416.4 million barrels in the week ended September 30th, the lowest level since 1984. Biden had tapped the emergency oil stash 4 times over the past year in hopes of lowering gas prices, including in March, when he ordered a record-setting 180 million barrels of oil released from the reserve. 1 million barrels per day over 6 months, reported Fox Business. The Indian government also said that they were assured there would be no cuts. Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri also said such cuts would have several unintended consequences too. He said, "I'm told that there were assurances given, don't ask me whom, etc., that in fact, they were not planning to do this, so it becomes a vicious cycle. Whether that has been fully taken into account or not, it's not for me to comment on the decision that has been taken. But I believe that all decisions which are taken and which have global ramifications have both intended and unintended consequences. How these play out we will see." Puri added that the decision comes at a time when many parts of the world are either in recession or are in recession-like conditions. 2 of the biggest oil producers of OPEC Plus are Saudi Arabia and Russia. While Saudis are a U.S. ally, Russians are the main rivals. In this decision, both are on board as high oil prices benefit both of them. Russian oil and gas have been a major financier of the Russian war efforts in Ukraine and, in the disruption in the pandemic, Russia has sold lots of oil at discount to countries like India and China, who have attracted the West's ire because of it. The oil production cuts hurt U.S. interests in 2 ways. 1. The cuts come at a time when the U.S.-led West is trying hard to wean the world off Russian oil. As prices rise, countries would find it hard to say no to discounted Russian oil. 2. The cut comes after long lobbying by the Biden administration with the Saudis to boost supplies. Rather than boosting, or even keeping supplies the same, the Saudis have now announced a cut. This is an embarrassment for the Biden administration. President Joe Biden has called the move a disappointment. Perhaps more accurately, it's an embarrassment for an American leader who has sought to enhance relations with the kingdom after a rough start. On top of that, it's a sign of the limits of America's ability to determine the global landscape amid its ongoing proxy war against Russia in Ukraine, in which Saudi Arabia has played both the U.S. and Russia against one another. In other news, Russia praised OPEC Plus on Sunday for agreeing to sharply cut oil production and fight what it called the mayhem sown by the United States in global energy markets. The 13-nation OPEC Plus group's decision to cut oil output despite U.S. opposition has put more distance in the relationship between U.S. President Joe Biden and Saudi Arabia's royal family. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said it was good that such balanced, thoughtful and planned work of the countries that take a responsible position within OPEC is opposed to the actions of the U.S. This at least balances the mayhem that the Americans are causing, Peskov said, according to Russian news agencies. The White House for months has engaged in diplomatic efforts to dissuade its Middle Eastern allies from cutting oil production. Biden hopes to keep U.S. petrol prices from spiking again ahead of November's elections, in which his Democratic Party is struggling to maintain control of Congress. Peskov said the U.S. had begun to lose its composure over the OPEC decision and was trying to push additional volumes of its oil reserves onto the market. Such a game will not lead to anything good, Peskov said. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters on Wednesday that the OPEC Plus decision was short-sighted as the global economy was still languishing from the continued negative impact of Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. It's clear that OPEC Plus is aligning with Russia, Jean-Pierre said. Making such a statement without proper backing sounds like what a desperate person would do, because these only means that USA are going to be greatly affected and are not ready to accept that reality that control has been relinquished from them. As the week unfolds, we would see the move US would make regarding this unprecedented event, and also, as Peter Zeihan advised, we have to look at what the Saudis are doing regarding the production cuts. Do you think this is also part of Putin's plan, or is this event completely random? Let us know what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.